Thank you so much, Veronica. Wonderful, wonderful job as always. Um, I thought of asking Mike a long time ago. I had this vision of this group in having more Al-Anon participation. So I booked them, I don't know, a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago. Last week turned out to be, it was a last minute cancellation, and Kiri Brown stepped in gratefully. So I apologize, but we're going to have another Al-Anon speaker, but I don't really think I need to apologize. I mean, my understanding of Fellowship of the Spirit is that we have always included Al-Anons, and we believe this is a family disease. So help me welcome Mike.
Joel, thanks, and thanks for asking me to be here. It's a pleasure and a privilege, and I'm glad you apologized, because I just don't think that anybody should have to listen to an Al-Anon 2 weeks in a row. Trust me. It's since meetings have opened back up, the last several months, year, whatever. It's been a little while since I've been on a Zoom meeting, so I'm really happy to be here, and it's great to see everybody. Let me just qualify myself for just a minute. My name is Mike Simmons. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area. My home group is the West Valley Recovery Group in Glendale, Arizona. My Al-Anon birthday is July 22nd of 2008. And what brought me in here was my wife's drinking. My family is, my immediate family is my wife and I, our 33-year-old daughter, who is an Al-Anon member as well, and our 29-year-old son, who is also a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm just super grateful to God that he's got about 2 years these days. But it was, in my early 40s, and the kids were kind of young teenagers at the time, and my wife's drinking had progressed to just being totally out of control. And I don't need to explain to you guys what that looks like. But for me, what it looked like was laying up at night, worrying all night about where she was, whether or not she was going to come home, whether or not she was okay. I've got this worst case scenario mentality that would tell me that she was probably upside down in a ditch with her car on fire. And the reality is she was just, going out to find her happy place, And I'm the type of Al-Anon that will go get in the truck and follow you around and run your trap line and try to find you and try to drag you home and be thankful to God when I found you safe and not dead, and then continue to yell at you all the way home for what you're doing to me and what you're doing to the kids, and look what you're doing to this family. And so eventually she came to a place where she decided it was trips to hospitals and spin drives and DUIs and all that fun stuff that goes on. And I'm just crazy. It was, when everything was cool in the house, our son was maybe 10, 11. Our daughter was maybe 15 or 16. And everything was cool until Dad got home. And the condition that Mom was in would determine how the rest of the night went. And if I got home and she was passed out or drunk, I came in. I was the hurricane. I was the tornado. I was the one that yelled and screamed and blamed and criticized and judged. And I realized eventually that when I got home, it was me that the kids were afraid of, and I was the chaos in the house. But I didn't know that. I mean, I knew I was, but I didn't know why. And I didn't know how it had come to that. And we talk in Al-Anon about this idea that we become irritable and unreasonable without knowing it. And it happens slowly over time. And just as with alcoholism, Al-Anonism, if you want to call it that, it has a real progressive nature. And slowly over a period of time, I wasn't myself anymore. You know, I was isolated. I didn't have any friends I was hanging out with because I was spending all of my time running circles around my wife and trying to fix her, trying to control her drinking, trying to make sure she was safe, just obsessed with what she had going on. And it sounds crazy because I mean, it does to me today. It sounds insane, and it was insane. And I mean, normal people would look at that and go, why? Why are you so worried about what somebody else is doing? And the dependency and the demand that Bill talks about in this essay is exactly why, you know. And I'll circle back to that in a minute, but that it hits the nail on the head, and it reminds me that, you know, in a family of recovery that we have today, which I am absolutely blessed and grateful for, you know, we got two AAs and 2 Al-Anons in our family, and we're not that different. I mean, our problems really are not that different. It's our solutions that are different, you know. And we all struggle with mental obsession, you know. My wife's and my son's was the mental obsession to drink. You know, my mental obsession was to try to keep them from drinking. And anytime you find yourself trying to keep an alcoholic from drinking, you're going to go crazy. It's not possible. It can't happen. You can't do it, you know. And so my wife eventually decides that she's going to go to an Al-Anon or an AA meeting, and Al-Anon meeting. She would never find herself in an Al-Anon meeting. Trust me. She decided she was going to go to an AA meeting, and I immediately volunteered to go with her. You know, I wanted to make sure she went. You know, I mean, that's the truth. And so, you know, I can justify and rationalize my behavior with the best of them, and I told her that I wanted to go with her, just because I wanted to be supportive and helpful. But months later, when I wrote inventory, I realized that I was just selfish as hell, and I just needed to know that she was going to do something so that I could start feeling better. Because at that time, the solution in my mind was, if she could stop drinking, I could be happy, you know. And there's the dependency. You know, I have placed my happiness now in the hands of somebody else. Not only have I placed it in the hands of somebody else, I've placed it in somebody else's disease. And now my happiness is completely dependent on the disease of alcoholism. And that's not a safe place to be. That's not a safe place for alcoholics or Al-Anons to be. And so I tagged along with her to meetings for about 2 or 3 months, and the thing that was awesome for me in that experience was hearing other people's stories, hearing other alcoholic stories, and realizing and finally learning that my wife wasn't unique, she wasn't different, she wasn't special. She's a garden variety alcoholic, and that there was hope. You know, I saw from a lot of folks that there was hope. And you know, but I was still the type of Al-Anon that tried to I tried to explain the meetings to her, and hey, did you hear this? And hey, what did you take away from that? And wow, you know, that person would be a great sponsor. And it was I'm crazy. I'm not the type of Al-Anon that you want around you. You want to drink. It'll make it miserable for you, or it'll make you want to drink more, I guess. But so after a while, several of the AA members kept telling me, hey, Mike, you should try Al-Anon. And I didn't know what Al-Anon was, and I had never heard of it. But I didn't even ask what it was. I wasn't even interested enough to say, hey, what is that? I just said, no, I'm good. I'm fine. Because in my head, I'm fine. I'm the hero in the house. I'm the good guy, and she's the problem. And and if if she would stop drinking, we'll all be okay. Well, she gets a sponsor, she starts working the steps, and almost immediately I'm calling her sponsor every night to tell her sponsor that she's been drinking again. But I'm okay, right? I mean, I'm perfectly normal. I don't have any problems. And her sponsor would say, Mike, have you heard of Al-Anon? No, I haven't, but blah, blah, blah. And one night I called her sponsor, and I said, this is happening like every night. And she said, oh, okay. And I said, well, if you would do your job, she would probably stop drinking. And then, I could get back to a normal life. And she asked me again if I had heard of Al-Anon. And I guess I was in a place just desperate, and I was in enough pain to say, what is that? Okay, what is it? She explained to me that it was a program of recovery for families and friends of alcoholics. She gave me a guy's phone number. I called him on July 22nd of 08. And that's what I consider my Al-Anon birthday, because that was the first time that I ever had the courage and the desperation to actually pick up the phone and call somebody. So I start going to Al-Anon meetings, and one of the first things I learn or hear is that the 3 C's, and that's a real common thing in every Al-Anon meeting. Well, most Al-Anon meetings, I hear the 3 C's, that I didn't cause the disease of alcoholism, I can't control the disease of alcoholism, and I can't cure the disease of alcoholism. And I had been to enough AA meetings to start to understand that I was not going to be able to cure this thing. And I had been to enough AA meetings to start to understand that my wife years ago had lost the freedom of choice when it came to drinking, that she no longer had that ability to not pick up that first drink, and that she could not stop, and when she stopped, she couldn't stay stopped. And I started to be able to, through a few months of Al-Anon, and I still continued to go to one open AA meeting every week, because that's what my sponsor directed me to do. And I love that. I'm grateful for that. And I started to develop some compassion, because all I had was, my wife and I have been married for 35 years, and we made it, I feel grateful that we made it through some really rocky, tough times. We made it through stays in the ICU and jail time, and everything in between. And I'm grateful that we made it, and we're best friends. And I've always loved her, but man, when she was drinking, I loved her, but I hated her. And I know that's a strong word, and I don't really use that anymore today, but at the time, that's how I felt. And through going to enough AA meetings and hearing enough of your guys' stories, and getting some Al-Anon under my belt, I started to develop some compassion, and I started to be able to separate her from her disease. And I started just barely to become less dependent and less demanding of her, because I started to realize that the solution to my problem was not her sobriety. And up until this point, I had treated it that way, and I had blamed her for my unhappiness, my unreasonableness, my irritability, my poor reactions, my 5-year-old emotional sobriety, because I was like a 5-year-old. Stomp my feet, kick and scream until I got my way. And when you're up against alcoholism, you don't get your way. I learned that I will lose that battle 1,000 times out of 1,000. And attending Al-Anon meetings and AA meetings, open AA meetings, is just an absolute must in my recovery, because I have to learn about this disease that these people that I love so very much possess. And so I start working my steps. I start writing, inventory, and I'm starting to get better, but slowly, as you guys say, slow by little, and my behavior starts to change around the house, but not immediately. It takes a little time, and I'm still like I'm still like an emotional kindergartner. And I think I talked to my sponsor one night and said a few things that I had told him, a few things I had said to my wife, and he said, "My God, if I was an alcoholic, I would, and married to you, I would drink too," and it, I don't know if he was right or not, but it hit home, and I got the point, and it didn't feel good to hear that. And I might have in my head said something like, "Hey man, I thought I didn't cause this, but you're telling me that you drink too." And but and so starting to work the steps was my path to gaining some emotional sobriety. And what's really interesting, and I have so many good friends in the Phoenix area that are AA members and Al-Anon members, and we hang out a lot. We spend a lot of time together, on fishing trips and camping and hangouts in the backyard, and we talk a lot about these things. And what's interesting is, for Al-Anons, we come in and we're not encumbered with the drink. We're not encumbered with the physical allergy and the mental obsession to drink. So physical sobriety is not an issue for us. And I don't like to compare, and I don't like to look at things as, well, this is an advantage and this isn't. It just is what it is, But when I come in as an Al-Anon, I don't need to worry about physical sobriety. I have the opportunity to get right to work on the emotional sobriety part of it. And I had a sponsor that was really good at that. And I had a sponsor, and he still is today. It is all about accountability. It's all about me being responsible for my thoughts, words, and actions. It's about me letting go of the dependence on other people, and especially their diseases. And when I say other people, I'm not talking just about alcoholics. I'm talking, extended family, coworkers, friends, in and out of the program. All human beings that I come in contact with. I mean, I get to start to let go of this dependency on their approval, because I came in here as a real image management expert, and I was pretty good at it for a while. I mean, our house was sick inside, but the front yard was always the nicest looking yard on the street. The kids were always dressed up and cleaned up when we went to church on Sunday morning. And everything looked good on the outside. And it was exhausting hiding from family and friends what was really going on in the house. It was exhausting. And when I was able to understand and be around you guys a little bit longer, that what you think of me is absolutely none of my business. And it doesn't have to have any bearing on my self-esteem, my self-image, and it's all about, I can hear my sponsor saying, Mike, if you're suffering from bad self-esteem, then you need to go take more esteemable actions. That's on you. That's your responsibility. Go out and go out and be of service to others, you know? And we're on like step 6 or 7 at this point, and I'm belly aching about something and talking about how I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. And you know, I'm going to lose my job or my car or whatever the heck the case was at the time, because it was always something. And he would hit me with, you know, I think I remember you doing step 3, right? And in my head, I've got some real choice words for him. But I had a lot of those conversations in my head with my sponsor. I don't know if you guys do or not, but that, you know, hopefully that stuff doesn't always come out of my mouth. But he said, you know, he said, you did step 3, Mike, and you made a decision. And you made a decision to stop worrying about yourself. And you made a decision to stop worrying about other people's approval. And you stopped trying to gain satisfaction and happiness from others, and you made a decision to put that in God's hands and to entrust your life and the care of your life in you know, put that in his care. And what that means is your life, Mike, is none of your business. It's just none of your business anymore. It's, you know, your job is to go take care of the rest of God's kids and focus on the process and leave the results up to him. And that was kind of how I started to be able to detach from this need of affirmation and you know, of others, and start to learn how that, you know, as Bill talks about, that, you know, the taking care of others in terms of being of service and caring more about others' feelings than I do my own, and giving love without any strings attached, you know, unconditional love. And if you would have asked me the day before I came in this program if I understood what unconditional love meant, I would have said, absolutely I do. And I practiced it. And what I learned my first year in Al-Anon is that I didn't know anything about it. And that it was something that it was a foreign subject to me that I did not understand, because this program over the course of the you know, the time I've been here have absolutely done I mean, my idea of what love looks like today has taken a complete 180-degree turn. It looks nothing like it looked when I got here. And I like, you know, I love the fact that, you know, Bill talks about, you know, the extra dividend. He says the extra dividend of giving without any demand for a return. And when I hear that, I read that, that for me is unconditional love. Love without any strings attached, with no conditions placed on it. You know, regardless of, you know, whether my son goes out and gets drunk again or not, I can treat him with respect and dignity and not feel let down or disappointed or less than because of somebody else's actions. You know, offering love to others regardless of the return to me. Because in the end, what I've learned and come to understand is that it is doing just that brings me happiness. The result of that is my happiness. The problem is I would confuse, I would have confusing motives sometimes. And I would try to force solutions and come up with strategies for other people to live their life the way I thought they should be living. And I was manipulative and controlling, all under the guise of thinking that I'm helping. And I'm not. I am absolutely selfish, Because at the bottom line and the real reason is that if you feel better and if you're doing better, then I will get to feel better. And that is a really sick place to try to have a relationship. It's not, you can't have a healthy relationship when two people are so enmeshed and entangled with each other emotionally and spiritually that they don't know where one starts and the other stops. And I had to let go of that. I had to start to practice this idea in Al-Anon that we talk about in terms of detachment with love. And it took me a long time to understand that, because I could, you know, first I just had to learn how to detach. I had to learn how to get the heck out of people's way and just leave them alone and stop the judgment, stop the criticism, stop the blame, and start to accept people for exactly who and what they are. And then I could start to love them for what they are and where they're at, you know. And it wasn't, and then it could stop being conditional upon, you know, hey, I will love you and treat you with respect as long as you are living your life in a way that pleases me. And moving on from that and getting past that is absolutely liberating. There is freedom in that. And slowly over time, I started feeling less nervous, less anxious, less worried, less afraid, you know, because I started to learn how to have some reliance, not a belief in, not trust in, but a reliance in God, in a power greater than myself, a God of my own understanding, which I'm still amazed at the genius of that concept. You know, I do have a history in religion, and I do have a religious background, but for some reason, I never developed that personal relationship with a power greater than myself through religion. It's not their fault. It's absolutely not their fault. That's on me. You know, I just was not able, for whatever reason, to hear a message of love and not just tolerance, but acceptance. And it wasn't until I came to Al-Anon that, you know, that I started to develop that. And now when I go back to church now, I hear things that make sense to me. I hear things that help. And I say, wow, when did the church get so smart all of a sudden? You know, as if they've changed, you know? And I know that that's not true. I know that these 12 steps change us as people. It is absolutely impossible. And I've sponsored a lot of guys. It's absolutely impossible to watch anyone go through this and not come out of it a different person, to varying degrees, you know. But it absolutely changed me as a person. And one of the best things about it is I got to learn that service, you know, presents this byproduct of happiness. Because if my motive is to help you so that I feel better, it just doesn't work. I have to help you without any regard for getting anything in return. And I have to let go of this idea that my happiness, my joy, my self-esteem, what you think about me, and all that other crap that we carry around with us for years has absolutely nothing to do with you. And it's my responsibility to let go of that and to place my reliance on a God of my understanding and a higher power. And I'm happy to say today that I never thought, I just never saw I never saw being able to get to a place where I was 80% happy. And that's what I describe it as today. You know, I am 80% happy because I mean, let's be real, you know. I mean, do I expect to be happy all the time? Absolutely not, you know. And I think 80% is pretty darn good compared to the 5 I came in here with. And I get to live today a relatively peaceful life. And I get to not worry about me because I've got a higher power that's his job. You know, my job is to go out and take care of my brothers and sisters to the best of my ability, and to let him handle whatever happens to me. And it's funny that when I get out of the results business, when I focus on the process and I get out of the results business, everything works out better. It works out better than I had planned. And I don't know why, you know, these very simple ideas, because the profound writings that Bill comes up with and others are so simple. You know, treat others the way you would want to be treated. I guess I missed that day in kindergarten. You know, I mean, that's something that they try to teach us when we're 5 years old. You know, maybe I ditched that day. I don't know. But, you know, live and let live and keep it simple and things like that. I just had no understanding of it because I allowed a disease to formulate my behavior, my reactions, my opinions. And I learned through writing inventory and doing step work that pretty much everything I was doing was selfish. And it was all in an effort to make myself feel better, even at the expense of others. Because a sick Al-Anon will absolutely deny you the opportunity to solve your own problems, to feel the results of your own behavior, your own choices, good or bad. I would rob my wife of the dignity to feel the consequences of her bad choices. And I would take from her the results of the happiness and the joy of things that she did well by saying, see, I told you, if you just did it this way, it would work out, you know? And that is just robbing others of the dignity to find themselves and to be themselves. And it feels good today to not be in that place and to just be able to love unconditionally and to let other people live their life the way they choose to live it. And I don't need to have an opinion on that because, you know, for me, opinions turn into expectations. Expectations turn into efforts to control. Efforts to control generally fail. And now I'm just left with the resentments and the anger and the frustration. And it is not a fun place to be. And I lived there I lived there. I almost said I lived there for too long. I must have lived there just long enough to get me in here. You know, it takes what it takes. And I hear new people all the time say, I wish I would have came here 10 years ago. Well, you know what? You weren't ready 10 years ago. You know, you're here today because you're ready today. And I try to remember that. And I try not to look at the past with regret and remorse, because it took what it took for me to get here. And it was a dark place. And when you hear someone say, I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon, What they're saying is that they are absolutely grateful that there is an alcoholic in their life that has given them the opportunity to get involved in a program of recovery and a fellowship that leads to more happiness than they thought they could have had. And I wasn't very kind to my wife when her drinking was at its worst. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that. And that's my goal. And it's only through AA and Al-Anon that I have that opportunity, because I get the chance to live a better life today because my wife has a disease that wants her dead. And I am absolutely grateful to be here. Joel, thanks for asking me to share. Pleasure to be here. Good to see all you guys. Thanks.
Mike, I just love your share. Listening to you, I think we're cut from the same cloth. The only difference is I have the phenomena of craving. Other than that, I had so much identification with you. It's at the point of the meeting where if you'd like to call on anyone in the Hollywood squares, you have that opportunity.
That's cool. I get to call on somebody. That's great. I'm going to go with Danny Haggins. Yeah, I see you there. You got to take yourself off mute, though.
He was in charge. Hi, everybody. I'm Danny, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. In fact, I got my 1-year marble today, this morning. So thank you. Yeah, I was nodding my head the whole time, and I loved your share, Mike. Thank you so much. And both of us were nodding, and we love listening to you. So thank you. That's it. Mute me.
All right. I can't get enough of that accent. I love it. So I'm gonna pick Veronica.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? I said this last week because we had an Al-Anon, a speaker, as you know, and I am an alcoholic, but I'm an Al-Anon riser, with an Al-Anon rising. And everything you said, I completely relate to. I think that's hilarious, by the way. I rang my wife's sponsor and, basically let her know if she was doing a better job, my wife would be better. And it is funny. It's hilarious. And then I caught myself a couple of minutes after going, I wonder how many times I've actually thought to ask my sponsor if she would just do something, either more time or something different or this or that, then my recovery, wouldn't I be further along than I am? So thank you for that. There was something that you said, I'm in this situation. I just found out 2 days ago, my dog's got really serious cancer. He's dying. And I've had a busy day today running around, getting information, picking up medications, getting different food, just what do I do? Is it end of life? Is it, all the stuff that comes with it. And sitting in this meeting, listening to what you say, and if I can remember the exact words that you said, this was the reference and what actually made me realize I've spent, was something to do with, my life. No, never mind what it is to do with. I'll tell you what I did, what I caught myself doing. As I'm getting busy, and one of the ways I operate, is I'm an insane self-manager. Control, if I can control people, places, circumstances, outcomes, as maybe I'm trying to control, this process of, finding out and what could I possibly do for my boy. And I just realized as I'm doing that, yes, he's been with me all day, And yet I've lost a day because I've actually been absent from my animal whilst I'm busy engaging in a behavior. So I really wish I could remember what it was that you said. That's when I went and grabbed my my notebook, because I just went, oh, I've got to write that down. That's exactly what I've been like, what reminded me of that. I having grown up in a crazy house, lots of pain, lots of alcoholic father, probably, you know, an Al-Anon mum. I don't know. I can't make that call for her, but it truly is a gift when people have the opportunity to get well. And I love the last thing that you said, you know, that you were given along the lines of, you were given the gift of, you know, loving an alcoholic, that you had the opportunity to get into Al-Anon. And it's in a way that, you know, and you were talking about, you know, something about, you know, the how I can't remember exactly. Again, I'm sorry, I'm so scattered because my mind is still split with what's going on with my animal. But one of the reasons why I'm a grateful alcoholic, and what I'm actually really grateful, apart from the things that I'm learning and discovering, and again, being given an opportunity to do differently, is that I'm grateful that I got sick enough. I was finally sick enough and desperate enough. Oh, I know what it was you were talking about. You know, people said, oh, I wish I'd come in 10 years earlier. I've said that so many times. Man, I wish I'd arrived 20 years before. You know, I'd be so much better now. I'm the age I am now. But I finally got sick enough that there was nowhere else to go. There was, you know, it was that desperate. And yeah, I am grateful. I'm grateful for having alcoholism, which sounds crazy saying it out loud, but it's extraordinary. Al-Anon is on the list there. I don't know when I'm going to arrive there. I don't know. I feel like I've got to get one program right first before I go into the next one. And of course, that's just a fantasy and it's not accurate, but really great to hear you. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. It's funny, the sponsor of my wife that I used to call and tattle on my wife to all the time, and tell her that, you know, if she did her job, you know, my wife would stop drinking. I sponsored her husband today. So it's kind of funny how that works, you know? Mr. Gary Brown.
Thanks, Mike. I'm married to an Al-Anon of 58 years, and and I thought I kind of hope I don't get called on here, but thank you anyway. I like to sit and relate sometimes when I get in conversations with Al-Anons, because I've been sober a long time now, and I may be sitting with one of the guys over a cup of coffee or something like that and start thinking I sound just like an Al-Anon. And it's something maybe somebody else I heard from Al-Anon and that. So it was a great talk, and I loved your honesty. And I'm certainly glad you did this. Thanks for calling on me.
Thanks, Gary. Jim L. in Toronto.
Yeah, Mike, thank you very much. That was a really, really good talk. I am in AA and I've been sober for a long, long time. And I went to Al-Anon when my son was about 18. He started drinking. And the only thing I'm going to say is I was there for about 12 years and I left because my son got better, but not because of anything I did. Just I found that I shared too much from an alcoholic point of view. So I left. But I will tell you that I can see from your talk tonight that what I used to consider, there was mostly men at the women at the group that I went to, and I used to call them black belts because you didn't get away with anything with any of these women. And not that I didn't like them, but that was my point of view. But I can see from what you said tonight that the same as our program, same as AA, you did the right thing. You got a sponsor, you got a good sponsor, and you worked with them. And I could tell by your talk tonight that you're really benefiting from working your program. So thank you very much for coming out and sharing with us.
Thanks for having me. It's, you know, I don't take one single bit of credit for any of my recovery. I just am lucky. I am lucky in sponsorship. You know, God put right in front of me the right guy at the right time. I didn't know it at the time. I just went with it. And so, you know, as my sponsors always told me, Mike, the only thing you ever get to take one bit of credit for is your willingness. That's it. Everything else is through God's grace. And so I'm grateful that life beat me into a state of reasonableness and willingness, you know. Belinda in New Jersey.
Thank you, Mike. And I did have a question for you, actually. Maybe you heard it. I don't know. I think I went to one Al-Anon meeting before I even knew about AA, and decided I didn't want to do that. Did you ever feel, I didn't hear anything about feeling guilty at all, like that you had any part in her alcoholism? And I've heard it from other people. I mean, I felt like, you know, if I hadn't have done this or that or whatever. So that's my question. But I really was enlightened by other things too.
It's interesting. I felt absolutely no guilt for my wife's alcoholism. You know, one of my biggest challenges was gaining humility, because I came in here thinking that I knew everything. And as it turns out, I really don't know very much at all. And, you know, I didn't come in as, there's a lot of Al-Anons that come in suffering from, you know, low self-esteem and I need to take care of myself and I need to do this and that. And I get it. I'm not, you know, there's something here for everybody, but that just wasn't me. You know, I didn't come in here with a low opinion of myself. Let's say that. And what was going on at the house it wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with it. Now, that's absolutely wrong, you know, because I contributed to someone else's disease in a big way, you know, and you know, all the things that I did, I was pouring gas on the fire the whole time, but I didn't know it. I wasn't aware of it. And the question about did I feel guilty? It's funny because the guilt didn't set in until about a year or two into Al-Anon, when I started to realize that I had been contributing to the disease, the family disease of alcoholism in my home. That's when the guilt started to set in. I didn't have any when I got here. And as my sponsor would tell me all the time, Mike, if you got a guilty conscience, it's probably because you're guilty of something. Let's do something different, you know. But that's a good question. It really is. That's interesting. I've never been asked that, and I've never heard anybody else ask that either. I like that. Let me see.
Let's give others an opportunity to ask you questions. Can we go to a show of hands? If no one's raising their hands, then you can keep on going. Use the reactions button and raise your hand. Amy.
Thank you, Joel. I'm Amy. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm so glad that hi, I love when everybody waves. Hi. Oh, thank you, everybody. I'm so glad that I tuned in tonight. Like I was texting with a friend and I said, oh my God, I love this guy. And she said, I do too. And I really love hearing Al-Anon, people, members of Al-Anon talk about, like hearing you talk about your recovery, right? And how you have recovered and what you do for your own recovery. I just absolutely love that. And one of the things that you said, and I was just talking about this with one of the women I sponsor today, is that phrase of treat people the way I want to be treated, right? And my previous sponsor goes, no, how about you treat people the way they want to be treated? And I was like, oh, what? Like, and she like, for me, she was explaining to me, like, when I say, then this is just my experience, right? Like when I say that, I am still bringing me into the equation, like, and it's selfish, right? My sponsor breaks it down. My previous sponsor breaks it down and says, no, that's still like about you, right? Like treat other people the way they want to be treated. And it was funny when you were talking about, things that you say in your head while your sponsor gives you direction or whatever. And I was just talking to the same woman this morning about, I said to her, you think I'm scary? You should talk to Tina. That's my sponsor. Because she, and the reason and she's not scary. She's just like, no, we're going to get to a solution right now. We're going to get to a solution right now. I'm not going to listen to your self-pity. And the funny thing is I say, oh, I don't want to hear her solution, but I really do because I call her. Right? Because I listen to her experience. She sponsors me because of her experience. And this program just is amazing, right? It is amazing and it's magic. It's not magic, but the things that happen are magical, right? And to hear what has happened in your life, Sansa, can you move? Like to watch and look at somebody and hear somebody and go, that is emotional sobriety right there. I want that. I want what that guy has. I want what that woman has. And so thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope tonight. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Jennifer, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Joel, thank you for bringing in some Al-Anon into this group. And thank you so much, Mike. Your share was great. It was just so good to hear. I've got a number of years in AA and I'm on the first step in Al-Anon. And I've done Al-Anon before, but I'm really having to look at it closely now. And so I was really paying attention to a lot of things you were talking about. And what I'm learning right now, it's just so, one thing I've always said I like about the alcoholics is that it's so easy to pinpoint them. I'm an alcoholic. We're so outrageous that it's so easy to pinpoint us as the problem. And the Al-Anon thing, it can be so hard to pinpoint the problem in the Al-Anon. And so what I've recently learned about myself is that I blind myself to reality by looking at the situations in which I'm pretty emotionally invested, like my daughters and stuff, but I look at it through rosy glasses. I just don't see what the problems are. So when my sponsor was asking me about what was going on, I was like, my God, it's great. I mean, it's so good. Thank God they're out of high school, now they're doing great. And she started questioning me more, and it's not, everything isn't great. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just not all so great and perfect. So that's one thing I'm looking at now as an Al-Anon. And then the other thing, I was at a workshop this past weekend and so many great things were said. The Al-Anon speaker there talked about an argument. She had gone to her sponsor with an argument that she had been having with her husband. And her sponsor said, the woman complained to her sponsor about all the things he had done. And her sponsor said, well, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's where they ended the phone call. But this woman knew that there was something missing. So she called her sponsor back, maybe I don't know if it's a couple of days later. And her sponsor said, well, everything you told me is right. But what we need to look at is, so what was going on with you? And man, that has been really something I've been thinking about a lot. And I was thinking about, and I have a wonderful partner. This guy is, he's really, there I am, Rosie, but no, he really is. He's a great, I just love my partner. He's so good to me. And we got into an argument while we were at this workshop, and at the end of it, I was right. I was right. And I thought about what this question was. Yeah, but what was going on with me? And when I sat with it, I started to see like self-righteousness. I'm superiority, like, oh, I got resentful at him. Why do you make it so hard for me to be right? You know, so I was resentful, self-righteous, all this stuff going on. And like, I just didn't even want anything to do with him. I was like, I can't believe I have to be in this car with, this is where I go. So this Al-Anon stuff, it's so dang subtle. And, but really good. It's really good stuff. So I appreciate you highlighting parts of it for me, because I'm trying very hard to see stuff that I'm finding difficult to see. So thank you.
Nancy, you are up.
There we go. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I'm a grateful member of both Al-Anon and AA. And it was really good to hear you, Mike. I really, really appreciated it. And, Sister Maurice used to talk about afflicted and affected, but I have always loved alcoholics, even before I knew I was one. I didn't know that that's what it was, but they're so damned appealing. And it was so much so that I almost didn't see people who weren't, it was just kind of in the way. And, I grew up in a house that was deeply, deeply affected. And I decided that I needed to be the one to fix things. I mean, on the one hand, I was right. They were not doing a great job. On the other hand, I decided at 5 years old that I would take over. Nobody was interested. Nobody has ever been interested in my fixing them. But it does not stop me from continuing to try to do so at my great cost, at their great cost. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to think you're the one with all the good ideas. And it was such, no wonder drinking was such a relief. But only later did I look back on that and realize that I wanted to save those people so that I would be safe. At the time, I did not want to wind up in a Shirley Temple orphanage, which is where I thought happened when your parents divorced. But I mean, I have always wanted to fix other people so that I could live a better life. And now I have a sponsor who says things to me like, nobody has to change for you to be happy. I want to kill her. She's absolutely right, but it drives me crazy. And, so I've got, I don't know, I came into Al-Anon in 85, so whatever that is. But my ex-husband used to say, so if you're having like a big anniversary in Al-Anon, does that mean that it's been 20 years since you interfered in somebody else's life? And, probably hasn't been 20 minutes. I am so anxious to help and guide people that I can answer questions I haven't been asked yet. I'm told at work constantly to slow down. Not everything that I think comes out of my mouth anymore. That's that pause that I was given here. But I agree with the previous speaker that AA is not easy, but it is clear. You have had a good day if you have not had a drink today. And the clarity around Al-Anon is, it's very Zen. It's really Zen, and it's just that I always love to go to the old lady meetings, people who were probably as old as I am now, but people who had lived with alcoholism for years and years and still found peace in their lives. I mean, that's kind of the miracle. That's kind of amazing. And and that thing, let me interpret what I thought you said, but there are times when I am fighting with the alcoholic and it is not clear which one of us has recovery. It is not because I look so sane and they look so crazy. But in addition to recovery, I also have people in my life who will help set me straight. And I have enough recovery to kind of know when I'm veering off. I'll I'll call my sponsor and I'll tell her, what's wrong with whoever. And she'll say, it's so not your business. I hardly know where to start, and, usually that's really kind of what I need to hear. But it doesn't necessarily stop me. I was ready in the middle of COVID to go visit a friend who was relapsing for the third time in the emergency room. And I kept thinking, is that really, thank you, a good idea? And a friend of mine said, you got your cape on. You're ready to save people who are not that interested in being saved. Stay home. So thank you for bringing that message here. It was really, really good to hear.
Twyla, you're up.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Twyla. I'm an alcoholic and I'm newly into Al-Anon. I'm so grateful for both. Mike, thank you so much for your share. I don't even know where to begin, honestly. Except right now, I'm just feeling a lot of healing from hearing your share. And I have a lot of questions that have been rambling around in my head, of course. And you brought a lot of clarity to me tonight, which is really so heartfelt that my heart's just full. And, I'm in a place right now. I mean, I took myself out of my home, literally, because I had to get away. And I needed to come to a place of healing. And I'm in that place right now with everyone here that's in this meeting as well. And I'm really appreciative. I'm so grateful. One of the things that my best friend said when he came to when I was first sober, he came to a NIMCI conference that we had in Santa Fe. And there was a speaker there. And I'll never forget, Bob turned to me and he said, man, and he had tears in his eyes. He goes, man, if I keep coming to these things, I'm going to love all these people. And I said, yeah, you will. They already love you. He was never a drinker. He never went to he was Bob. And you brought that home to me tonight, Mike. Thank you. That was such a gift. And other things people have said tonight and just other people I see anyway, thank you all very much. I'm so grateful for being sober today. I'm so thankful that now I have this gift of participating with Al-Anon. And what's better? Good grief. How much better can life get? I don't know. It seems to be getting better by the moment. I don't get it, but God's here.
Hey, Joel, here's a funny story. I was listening to Nancy and she was talking about that it's real clear with NAA, whether or not someone's sober or relapses. And in Al-Anon, there's a little bit of subjectivity to that. And I had a sponsor one night who calls me up and says, he's in a rage and he's just angry as heck. His wife relapsed. And I said, well, she was only sober for like 2 weeks. That's not really a relapse. She's never really gotten sober, for any length of time. And he said, she was passed out on the floor and I stacked the empty wine bottles around her body. So when she wakes up, she'll see them all. And I said, well, whose relapse are we talking about here? We're crazy, man.
Well, I'm glad that you chimed in because at this point, I usually ask the speaker any final words or thoughts or things that you would have liked to have discussed that just, that slipped by you.
No, not really. I was really thinking a lot about, what Nancy said, and I really enjoyed the other shares. It is interesting, and I get asked that question a lot by friends of mine in AA, like, how do you know if you had a relapse, and it for me, Al-Anon, it just comes down to a program of accountability. I am responsible. I'm responsible for how I treat others. I'm responsible for the things I say and do. And one of the prayers I say at night is, God, let people tomorrow treat me the way I treated them today. And that, I tell you what, when you know that you have not been kind and you know you've been mean, that's a hard prayer to say. I mean, I am literally asking for God to allow people to treat me the way I treated them today. And it helps me. Sometimes it just gives me that little pause between thought and action. And that's sometimes all I need. I just need that pause so that the stupid things that pop into my brain don't come out of my mouth and don't come out, in my actions. And if I can get that, I mean, and I didn't have that, I didn't have that filter when I got in here. I didn't have the ability, no different than my wife not having the freedom to choose not to drink. I did not have the freedom to choose to say whether or not I said the mean, spiteful, critical things that came out of my mouth. And I don't blame myself for that. I don't feel guilty for that anymore today. I feel grateful that I became aware of it and that I had an opportunity to change it. Because if I'm not aware of it, then I've got no hope. I'm not going to grow, But if I'm aware of it and I remain humble and I remain teachable, then I've got a chance,
I know when I introduced myself to you, Mike, that was before COVID. I don't know, it seems like there was a life before COVID. And I drop in on Al-Anon meetings every once in a while. I used to attend Al-Anon much more frequently. Somebody mentioned 1985. That's when I came into Al-Anon. And I was seeing a woman that things were not going my way. She would not remain faithful. And I try and break up with her, but I couldn't break up with her for long without feeling like I was going into withdrawal. I felt sick. And I was sharing at AA meetings about that, and the feedback was, why don't you be a man? Women are like, trolley cars, another one will come along, this, that. And I just felt like no one understood what I was going through. And someone recommended you go to an Al-Anon meeting. So I looked it up and I found a meeting called Double Winners, which was for alcoholics and people who have, codependency. That was a buzzword back then, codependency. So I go to this meeting and within 15 minutes, I'm listening to people share. And I realize I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. My mother was a drunk. I'm divorced, my first wife, she's a drunk. And I realized I belonged in Al-Anon. And I got an Al-Anon sponsor and I really fell in love with Al-Anon. But there was like a kind of, in New York City, there was like Al-Anon out there, and Al-Anon said, don't talk about the big book. We don't do, I said, but the steps come out of the big book. And it's, like it was a separation. We got our own literature. And I'd go to the AA meetings and they'd talk about those women down the Al-Anons, we call them Our Ladies of Perpetual Revenge. And there was this cleavage, But I loved Al-Anon. And as I grew in sobriety, I realized there was so many useful tools that I was learning from Al-Anon that applied to alcoholics, especially if you want to sponsor people. It helped me a lot, with sponsees. I wouldn't do what I wanted them to do. So anyway, it's been a journey. I love your talk. I recognize so much spirituality and emotional and recovery, and you're an excellent example, of working this program. And like I said earlier, I said, everything that you shared, I've had the exact same feelings, the exact same behaviors at one time or another. I mean, The only difference between you and I is I cannot drink safely. If I pick up that first drink, I'm doomed. I'm an
Our-
alcoholic of the doomed and hopeless variety.
we're way more similar than we are different, and you know, our problems really, they're just not that different. And you know, in AA and Al-Anon, I don't think any of us have the market cornered on some of these issues. You know, we're dealing with human issues, you know, selfishness, self-centeredness, pride, ego, fear. You know, I mean, these are not things that we have the market cornered on. They might be a little amplified in our lives because of our own reactions and things, but you know, it's you know, we are the lucky ones. We're the ones that found a place to come in here and actually become aware of and address these very human conditions that we struggle with. You know, and like I said, because someone I love has a disease that wants her dead, I get to live a better life as a result. That's amazing, you know? And it's amazing to me when anybody gets sober. They're true miracles, you know? And when I look at my wife and what she's been through and the fact that she's sober and happy today, it's amazing to me. And, you know, I owe a debt. You mentioned the big book in Al-Anon, and that is a really, unfortunately, that is a very controversial subject in Al-Anon. And I don't like it. I'm not happy about that. You know, in Al-Anon, the big book is not considered conference approved literature. So in Al-Anon meetings, and I was walked through the steps right out of the big book. You know, that's how my sponsor brought me through the steps, and that's how I take everybody I sponsor through the steps. And I am absolutely a student of that book. But I do not ever mention it in an Al-Anon meeting. And the reason I don't is because it is the group conscience of Al-Anon that book is not conference approved literature. And I can't afford the liberty of breaking the group conscience. I'm the type of Al-Anon, if you give me an inch, I'll take a mile. And I have got to stay humble enough to respect the group conscience and not violate that just because I don't agree with it. And so maybe it's a good thing for me that is the group conscience, because it helps me grow in humility. And there's always things that I agree with and that I don't agree with. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Take what you like and leave the rest, but have respect for the group conscience, either at the group level, the district level, the area level, the WSO level, whatever it is.
Okay, we've come to that point in the meeting where we will go into our inner room and say a prayer or meditate for about a minute and a half.